I'll write an engaging revenge story for you, following the outline provided. Here's the story. The first time I saw the Instagram story, I thought my eyes were playing tricks on me. There it was, crystal clear on my cousin Emma's feed, a sprawling backyard decorated with twinkling lights, elegant floral arrangements, and a banner that read, "Congratulations, Ryan and Claire, my brother's engagement party." The one I hadn't been invited to. My name is Abigail Turner, though everyone calls me Abby. At 30. I've built a decent life for myself as a graphic designer in Portland, far from the Seattle suburb where I grew up. I'm the kind of person who remembers birthdays without Facebook reminders, who brings homemade cookies to work just because, and who has never missed a single important event in my family's life. Until now, apparently, when they decided I wasn't important enough to include in theirs. I stared at my phone screen, scrolling through more stories from various relatives and family friends. The party looked magnificent. My mother Linda had clearly outdone herself with the planning. There was my father Michael, raising a champagne glass in a toast, and Ryan, my baby brother, beaming beside a blonde woman I recognized as Claire Whitman, his girlfriend of 2 years. Everyone was there, everyone except me. My hands trembled as I opened my email, searching for an invitation I might have missed. Nothing. I checked my texts, my voicemails, even my spam folder. The silence was deafening. This wasn't an oversight. This was deliberate. Growing up, Ryan and I were inseparable. He came into the world 3 years after me. A squalling bundle of red face and tiny fists that immediately wrapped around my finger and never quite let go. Or so I thought. My earliest memory of him is sitting in the hospital waiting room, swinging my legs impatiently while Grandma tried to keep me entertained with coloring books. When Dad finally came out and said I could meet my baby brother, I'd run so fast I'd nearly tripped over my own feet. Those early years were painted in watercolors of shared adventures. Our house on Maple Street had a big backyard with an ancient oak tree that we'd turned into our kingdom. I taught Ryan how to climb it when he was 5. Standing beneath with my arms outstretched, ready to catch him if he fell. He never did. He trusted me completely, and that trust was something I wore like a badge of honor. Our parents, Michael and Linda Turner, loved us in their own way, but their marriage was like a storm system that never quite moved on. They fought about everything: money, work schedules, whose turn it was to take out the trash. Their voices would rise and fall like tide waves through the thin walls of our house, and Ryan would creep into my room with his stuffed dinosaur clutched to his chest. "Make them stop, Abby," he'd whisper, and I'd pull him under my covers and tell him stories about brave knights and clever princesses until the house grew quiet again. I became an expert at distraction. When Mom and Dad's voices grew sharp over breakfast, I'd suddenly remember that Ryan and I needed to build a fort in the living room. When dinner became a battlefield of passive-aggressive comments, I'd announce that Ryan and I were putting on a play and needed everyone's attention immediately. I was the buffer, the peacemaker, the one who made sure Ryan's childhood had pockets of joy despite the tension that lived in our walls like a fifth family member. The summer Ryan turned 7, I taught him to ride a bike. Dad had bought it for his birthday but was too busy with work to teach him, and Mom said her back hurt. So every evening after dinner, I'd run alongside Ryan as he wobbled down our quiet street, my hand on the seat, steadying him. "Don't let go," he'd shout, pedaling furiously. "I won't," I'd promise, even as I gradually loosened my grip, letting him find his own balance. The day he finally rode all the way to the stop sign without my help, he turned back to me with such pure joy on his face that I'd felt my heart might burst. "Did you see that, Abby? Did you see?" I saw everything. I'd told him, and I had. I'd seen every scraped knee, every frustrated tear, every moment of determination that led to that victory. I'd been there for all of it. Middle school was when I first noticed other families were different from ours. My friend Sarah's parents slow danced in the kitchen while making dinner. Tom's mom and dad held hands at school events. But at the Turner house, we lived in carefully orchestrated shifts. Mom took mornings, Dad took evenings, and they passed each other like ships in the night, exchanging only the briefest of necessary communications. Ryan started getting bullied in 6th grade. Some kid named Derek had decided that Ryan's love of reading made him an easy target. I was a freshman in high school by then, navigating my own social minefield. But the day I saw Ryan come home with his backpack torn and his library book destroyed, something primal rose up in me. The next morning, I waited by Derek's locker. I didn't threaten him, didn't raise my voice. I simply explained, in vivid detail, what would happen if he so much as looked at my brother wrong again. I might have mentioned that I knew where he lived, that I'd seen him sneaking cigarettes behind the gymnasium, and that his mother would probably love to hear about that. Derek never bothered Ryan again. "How did you do it?" Ryan had asked, awe in his voice when the bullying suddenly stopped. "Magic," I told him, ruffling his hair. "Big sister magic." He'd believed me. Back then, he'd believed everything I said. High school brought new challenges. I discovered I had a talent for art and spent hours in the studio after school. Ryan would often join me, doing his homework at a nearby table while I worked on projects. He never complained about having to wait, never whined about being bored. He just wanted to be near me, and I let him, grateful for the company. Our weekend tradition was Saturday morning pancakes. No matter how late I'd stayed up Friday night or how early Ryan had sports practice, we'd meet in the kitchen at 8 a.m. sharp. I'd perfected Dad's secret recipe. Complete with a dash of vanilla and a sprinkle of cinnamon, Ryan would set the table with military precision, making sure the syrup was warm and the butter was soft. "When you go to college, who's going to make me pancakes?" he'd asked one morning during my senior year, and there was real worry in his voice. "I'll come home every weekend," I'd promised. Pancakes are sacred. I'd kept that promise for the first semester, driving 2 hours each way every Saturday morning. But life has a way of interfering with our best intentions. Study groups, part-time jobs, and college life gradually eroded our tradition. By my sophomore year, I was lucky if I made it home once a month. Ryan never complained, but I noticed changes when I did visit. He was quieter, more reserved. He'd started high school and was finding his own friends, his own interests. The distance between us was no longer just geographical, it was emotional too. I told myself it was normal, healthy even. He was growing up, becoming his own person. I was proud of him for it, even as I mourned the little boy who used to think I hung the moon. After college, I got a job offer in Portland. It was an incredible opportunity with a design firm I dreamed of working for. The pay was good, the city was vibrant, and the creative scene was everything I'd hoped for. But it meant moving even further from Seattle, from home, from Ryan. "You should take it," he'd said when I told him about the offer. He was 18 then, about to start his own college journey at the University of Washington for engineering. "Portland's cool. I'll come visit." Every weekend, I'd teased, echoing our old pancake promise. Every weekend, he'd agreed, but we both knew he was lying. The first year in Portland was a whirlwind of new experiences. I threw myself into work, into making friends, into building a life that was entirely my own. I decorated my apartment with plants and art prints, joined a book club, started dating a guy named Marcus who made me laugh but ultimately wasn't right for me. I was happy, or at least I told myself I was. Ryan and I texted regularly at first. Funny memes, updates about classes, complaints about roommates. But gradually, the messages grew shorter, less frequent. Phone calls became a monthly occurrence, then quarterly. I'd invite him to visit, offering to pay for his ticket, promising to show him all the best food trucks and coolest galleries. He always had an excuse: exams, projects, internships. "Next time" became his standard response, and I stopped pushing. It was during his junior year that he met Claire. I heard about her in passing at first, just mentions in our increasingly rare conversations. "I'm seeing someone," he'd said casually during one call, as if it were no big deal. Maybe to him, it wasn't. I finally met Claire at Thanksgiving that year. She was everything I wasn't: polished, poised, from old Seattle money. Her blonde hair was perfectly styled. Her clothes were designer without being ostentatious. And she had a way of smiling that never quite reached her eyes. At least not when she looked at me. "So you're the famous Abby," she'd said when Ryan introduced us. And something in her tone made it sound like an accusation rather than a greeting. The dinner was awkward. Claire monopolized Ryan's attention, touching his arm constantly, whispering private jokes that pointedly excluded everyone else. When I tried to engage her in conversation, asking about her studies or her family, she gave short, dismissive answers before turning back to Ryan. "She seems nice." I'd lied to my mother later while doing dishes. "She's from a good family," Mom had replied, which wasn't really an answer to anything but told me everything I needed to know about why my parents approved. After that Thanksgiving, the distance between Ryan and me calcified into something permanent. Our text exchanges became perfunctory birthday and holiday wishes. Phone calls ceased altogether. When I'd reach out, suggesting a siblings' weekend or offering to come to Seattle for a visit, Ryan would respond days later with vague excuses about being busy. I told myself I understood. He was in love, building his own life, moving in circles that had nothing to do with his art school dropout sister who made decent money but would never be wealthy, who preferred thrift stores to boutiques, who still remembered when he was afraid of the dark and needed 3 stories before bed. But understanding and accepting are 2 different things. And late at night in my Portland apartment, I'd sometimes pull up old photos on my phone. Ryan and me at the beach, building sandcastles. Ryan on my shoulders at a concert, straining to see over the crowd. Ryan in his high school graduation cap, hugging me so tight I could barely breathe. When had that boy, my shadow, my responsibility, my best friend, become a stranger? Last Christmas was the final time I saw him in person. I'd driven up to Seattle, car loaded with carefully chosen presents and homemade cookies. The house on Maple Street looked the same, but felt different, like visiting a museum of my childhood rather than a home. Claire was there, of course. She'd been integrated into family traditions as if she'd always belonged, while I felt like a guest who'd overstayed their welcome. She and Ryan had their own inside jokes now, their own shorthand. When I'd suggested we do our traditional Christmas Eve movie marathon, Ryan had looked at Claire first, silently asking permission. "Actually, we have plans with Claire's family," he'd said apologetically. "Their Christmas Eve party is kind of a big deal." "Oh," I'd tried to keep the hurt out of my voice. "Maybe Christmas morning, then pancakes." "Claire doesn't really eat gluten," Ryan had said, as if that explained everything, as if our 20-year tradition could be dismissed because his girlfriend had dietary preferences. I'd left Seattle early on Christmas Day, claiming a work emergency that didn't exist. The 5-hour drive back to Portland had felt both endless and not nearly long enough. I'd cried somewhere around Olympia, pulled over at a rest stop to collect myself, then cried again when I got home to my empty apartment with its cheerful decorations that suddenly seemed to mock me. That was 8 months ago. Since then, communication with my family had dwindled to almost nothing. Mom called occasionally. But our conversations were surface-level reports about weather and work. Dad texted sports scores and dad jokes that required only emoji responses. And Ryan radio silence. I'd tried to convince myself this was adulthood, that all siblings grew apart, that it was healthy and normal and fine. I had friends in Portland, work I enjoyed. A life that was full in its own way. Sophie, my closest friend here, had become like a sister to me. Her husband Mark treated me like family. I went to their daughter's soccer games, helped paint their kitchen, spent holidays with them when driving to Seattle seemed like too much effort for too little reward. "Family is who shows up," Sophie would say when I'd get melancholy about Ryan. "And we always show up for each other." She was right, of course. But there was still a Ryan-shaped hole in my life that no amount of chosen family could quite fill. He was my history, my childhood, my first best friend. He was the person who knew that I was afraid of butterflies until I was 10, who remembered our secret handshake, who used to think I was invincible. Which brings me back to that moment, staring at my phone, watching strangers celebrate my brother's engagement while I sat alone in my apartment 300 miles away. The party looked like it had been planned for months. This wasn't some spontaneous gathering that I'd missed due to last-minute planning. This was deliberate, intentional, cruel. I called my mother first. She answered on the third ring, sounding breathless and happy. I could hear party noises in the background, laughter, clinking glasses, the low hum of conversation. "Abby, how are you, sweetheart?" "I'm fine, Mom. Where are you? Sounds like a party." There was a pause. I could practically hear her calculating her response. "Oh, just a little get-together at the house. Nothing special." Really, because Emma's Instagram makes it look pretty special. Congratulations, Ryan and Claire is a pretty specific banner for a casual get-together. The pause was longer this time. "Abby, it's complicated." "Complicated? What's complicated about inviting your daughter to her brother's engagement party?" "It wasn't my decision." The words came out in a rush, defensive. Claire's family had specific ideas about the guest list. They're very particular about these things. You know how it is with these established families. "No. Mom, I don't know." "Explain it to me. Explain how my brother's future in-laws get to decide that I'm not worthy of celebrating his engagement." "That's not—" "Abby, please don't make this difficult. It's Ryan's day. We didn't want any drama." "Drama. My existence is drama now." "You know that's not what I meant, but you and Claire have never really clicked, and she wanted the day to be perfect." "Perfect, without me." "Abby." She sighed, and I could picture her rubbing her temple the way she always did when stressed. "We figured you wouldn't want to drive all this way for just a party anyway. You're always so busy with work." You figured wrong, Mom. But thanks for making that decision for me." I hung up before she could respond, my hands shaking with rage and hurt. Next, I tried my father. He answered with his usual gruff greeting, sounding distracted. "Hey, Dad, Mom says you're having a party." "Abigail." He only used my full name when he was uncomfortable. "Your mother told you." "Instagram told me, but nice try." He sighed heavily. "Look, kiddo, it's just a party, not worth driving all the way up for. The Whitmans went a little overboard, between you and me, champagne fountains and whatnot. Not really our style. But apparently it's Ryan's style now. He's trying to fit in with Claire's world. You can understand that, can't you? Man's got to keep his woman happy." The casual sexism made me wince, but I pushed past it. Does keeping Claire happy mean pretending he doesn't have a sister? Don't be dramatic. Look, you'll be at the wedding. That's what really matters. Will I, or will the Whitmans decide I don't fit the aesthetic for that too? "Abby!" His voice held a warning now. "Don't cause trouble. Your brother's happy. Be happy for him." I'd love to be happy for him, Dad, in person, at his engagement party, like a normal family member. "This isn't about you," he said firmly. "Not everything is about you, Abigail." The words stung more than any slap could have. Not everything was about me. When had anything ever been about me? I'd spent my entire childhood making sure everything was about Ryan, about keeping peace between my parents, about holding our fractured family together with sticky tape and stubborn determination. "You're right," I said quietly. "Nothing ever is." I hung up and immediately tried Ryan. Straight to voicemail. I texted him, "Congratulations on your engagement. Would have loved to celebrate with you." 10 minutes later, he responded, "Thanks, super busy with party stuff. Talk later." Talk later, as if we ever talked anymore, as if later ever came. I sat in my apartment, staring at my phone as more photos populated social media. There was Aunt Patricia, who I'd helped move 3 times. Uncle George, whose hospital bills I'd contributed to when he was between jobs. Cousins I'd babysat. Family friends I'd known since childhood. Everyone who mattered to Ryan was there. Everyone except the person who'd taught him to tie his shoes. Who'd checked for monsters under his bed. Who'd loved him first and fiercest and without condition. The hurt was a physical thing, sitting heavy in my chest like a stone. But beneath the hurt, something else was stirring. Anger. Not the hot, quick flame of temper, but something colder and more determined. They'd made their choice. They'd drawn their lines, decided who belonged and who didn't. They'd rewritten our family history with me edited out like a bad photo. Sophie found me the next morning, still in yesterday's clothes, surrounded by empty wine bottles and used tissues. She took one look at the scene and went into best friend crisis mode, which meant making coffee and letting me talk without judgment. They just excluded me, I said for probably the 10th time. Like I don't matter, like I never mattered. You matter, Sophie said firmly. You matter to us. You matter to your work. You matter to everyone whose life you touch. If they can't see that, that's their loss. But he's my brother. My voice broke on the word. I practically raised him. How can he just forget that? People change, Abby. Sometimes they change into people we don't recognize. It doesn't erase what you had, but you can't force him to remember if he's chosen to forget. So what do? Just accept it, pretend it doesn't hurt. Sophie was quiet for a moment, then smiled. You know what Mark's mom always says, living well is the best revenge. You want to show them what they're missing. Show them you don't need them to be happy. I don't feel very happy right now. No, but you will. Mark and I were planning to go camping next weekend up in the Cascades. Come with us, get out of the city, breathe some mountain air. Remember that the world is bigger than your family drama. I wanted to say no, to wallow in my hurt a little longer. But the thought of escaping Portland, of putting physical distance between me and the virtual engagement party still playing out on social media, was appealing. Okay, I said. Okay, yes, let's do it. Sophie hugged me tight. That's my girl. We'll have an amazing time. And you can post gorgeous mountain photos that will make everyone wish they were with you, instead of at some stuffy party. I laughed despite myself. Is that petty? Absolutely. But pettiness has its place, and this is it. The week dragged by with excruciating slowness. I threw myself into work, designing logos and layouts with manic focus. But every quiet moment brought back the sting of exclusion. I found myself composing messages to Ryan that I never sent, each one angrier than the last. Remember when you were scared of the vacuum cleaner and I told you it was a friendly monster that ate dirt? Delete. I'm sorry Claire finds my existence inconvenient. Delete. Do you ever think about who you used to be? Delete. By Friday, I was more than ready to escape the city. I packed my camping gear with the kind of meticulous care usually reserved for my design projects. Hiking boots, check. Sleeping bag, check. Camera to capture memories that didn't include my family. Check and double check. Sophie and Mark picked me up early Saturday morning. Their 4-year-old daughter, Lily, was staying with Mark's parents, so it was just the three of us. I settled into the back seat of their Subaru, letting their easy chatter wash over me as we left Portland behind. The drive to the Cascade Mountains was beautiful. August had painted the landscape in shades of gold and green. We stopped at a farmer's market along the way, loading up on fresh fruit and local honey. For the first time in a week, I felt like I could breathe properly. Our campsite was perfect, nestled between towering pines with a clear view of Mount Jefferson in the distance. We spent the day setting up camp, hiking a nearby trail, and playing cards by the fire. Mark told terrible jokes that made me groan and laugh in equal measure. Sophie shared stories from her childhood camping trips. I found myself relaxing, the knot in my chest loosening with each passing hour. See, Sophie said that night as we sat around the campfire, roasting marshmallows. This is what life is about: good friends, good views, and absolutely no family drama. To no family drama, I toasted, raising my s'more. To chosen family, Mark countered, and we all drank to that. The next morning dawned crystal clear. We decided to hike to a viewpoint Sophie had read about, supposedly offering panoramic views of the entire mountain range. The trail was challenging, but not impossible, winding through forests and meadows dotted with wildflowers. About 2 hours in, we reached a clearing that made us all stop in our tracks. The mountains stretched out before us in layers of blue and purple, morning mist still clinging to the valleys. It was the kind of view that made you feel simultaneously insignificant and part of something magnificent. We need a photo, Sophie declared, already pulling out her phone. This is too gorgeous not to document. We took the standard group selfies first. Then Sophie insisted on taking individual shots of each of us. When it was my turn, she directed me like a professional photographer. Stand there, where the light hits you. No, arms out, like you're embracing the world. That's it. You look like a goddess. I laughed, feeling silly but free. The sun was warm on my face, the mountain air crisp in my lungs. For a moment, I forgot about engagement parties and exclusion. I was just Abby, standing on top of the world, surrounded by people who wanted me there. One more, Sophie called. This light is perfect. I spread my arms wide, tilting my face to the sky, and really smiled. Not the polite smile I used for work presentations or the forced smile I'd worn last Christmas, but a real, genuine expression of joy. In that moment, I wasn't thinking about Ryan or Claire or my parents. I was thinking about how lucky I was to have Sophie and Mark, to live in a place where I could drive to views like this, to have built a life that was mine, even if it wasn't the one I'd imagined. Sophie showed me the photo immediately. I looked radiant, alive, like someone who was exactly where she was supposed to be. The mountains framed me perfectly, the morning light creating an almost ethereal glow. This is it, Sophie said decisively. This is the one you're posting. I don't know. No, trust me, look at you. You look happy and free and absolutely gorgeous. This is the energy we're putting out into the world. That evening, back at camp and still high from our hike, I finally posted the photo. I spent a while thinking about the caption, wanting something that felt true without being bitter. Finally, I settled on, so grateful for the family you choose and the adventures that choose you. Sometimes the best moments are the ones you never planned. I tagged Sophie and Mark, added a few hashtags about hiking and the Cascades, and hit share. Then I put my phone away, determined not to obsess over likes or comments. We spent the rest of the evening playing guitar Mark had brought his, singing badly, and making plans for future camping trips. It wasn't until we were driving back to Portland the next day that I finally checked my phone. What I saw made me nearly drop it. 47 missed calls. Over 100 text messages. My Instagram notifications were maxed out. Most of the calls were from Ryan, with a significant number from both parents. The text preview showed variations of, "Call me now," and, "What were you thinking?" and "How could you?" "What's wrong?" Sophie asked, noticing my shock from the driver's seat. I don't know. My family is losing their minds about something. I opened Instagram first, trying to understand what had triggered this meltdown. My innocent hiking photo had somehow garnered hundreds of likes and dozens of comments. Most were from friends and acquaintances, saying things like, "Gorgeous," and "Take me with you," next time. But there were also comments from family members that made my stomach drop. Aunt Patricia, interesting timing for a vacation. Uncle George, some people have their priorities straight. Cousin Emma, wow, just wow. Oh my God, I breathed, scrolling through more judgmental comments from relatives I hadn't heard from in months. What is it? Mark turned around from the passenger seat, concerned. They think I posted this to spite them. The photo. They think I deliberately went camping to make some kind of statement about missing Ryan's party. Sophie snorted. That's the most narcissistic thing I've ever heard. Not everything is about them. But as I read through the messages, I realized the situation was even worse than I'd thought. Apparently, my photo had been shared at the engagement party. Someone, I couldn't figure out who, had shown it to Claire. She'd allegedly burst into tears, claiming I was trying to overshadow her special day. Ryan had seen it and was furious. The party had devolved into gossip and speculation about family rifts and bad blood. The first voicemail from Ryan was scorching. I cannot believe you would pull this kind of stunt. Today was supposed to be about Claire and me, and you just had to make it about yourself, didn't you? You couldn't stand not being the center of attention for once. Claire is devastated, Mom's upset. You've ruined everything, just like you always do. I hope you're happy. Just like I always do, When had I ever ruined anything? When had I ever made anything about myself? The injustice of it burned through me like acid. My mother's messages were more guilt-laden. Abigail, I'm very disappointed in your behavior. Whatever point you were trying to make, you've made it. The Whitmans are mortified. Please call me so we can discuss this like adults. My father's were briefer but no less cutting. Not cool, Abby. Not cool at all. I played some of the messages for Sophie and Mark as we drove. Their indignation on my behalf was gratifying. Are they serious? Mark's voice was incredulous. You posted a photo of yourself hiking. How is that about them? The timing, I said weakly. They think I did it on purpose. So what if you did? Sophie's hands gripped the steering wheel tighter. They excluded you from a major family event. You went camping with friends. You posted a nice photo. If they want to read malice into that, that's their guilty conscience talking. She was right, but it didn't make the onslaught of family condemnation any easier to bear. By the time we reached Portland, I'd received messages from relatives I hadn't spoken to in years, all eager to weigh in on my supposed attention-seeking behavior. Sophie and Mark wanted to come up to my apartment, but I needed to be alone to process everything. I climbed the stairs to my unit, feeling simultaneously numb and raw. Inside, I poured myself a large glass of wine and sat on my couch, staring at my phone. Part of me wanted to call Ryan back, to defend myself, to make him understand that the world didn't revolve around his engagement party. But a larger part, a part that had been growing stronger all week, was tired of defending myself to people who had already decided I was guilty. I opened my laptop and looked at the photo again on a larger screen. Sophie was right. I did look happy. I looked like someone who was loved, who had adventures, who didn't need anyone's approval to exist. The contrast between that woman in the photo and the one sitting alone on her couch, devastated by her family's rejection, was stark. My phone rang. Ryan again. This time, I answered. Finally, his voice was sharp. Do you have any idea what you've done? Hello to you too, Ryan. Don't act like you're the victim here. Claire saw your post. She saw the caption about choosing family. She knew exactly what you were implying. I was implying that I'm grateful for my friends. If Claire wants to read more into that, maybe she should examine why she feels guilty. Guilty? She has nothing to feel guilty about. You're the one who caused a scene. I caused a scene I wasn't even there. How could I cause a scene at a party I wasn't invited to? You know what you did. Posting that photo with that caption, knowing we'd all see it. You wanted to make us look bad. I laughed, but it wasn't a happy sound. Ryan, do you hear yourself? You threw an engagement party and deliberately excluded your only sister. But I'm the bad guy for going camping. It wasn't like that. Then what was it like? Explain it to me. Explain how you forgot to invite the person who taught you to ride a bike. Don't bring up ancient history. Ancient history? Is that what I am to you now? You're being dramatic. No, Ryan. For once in my life, I'm not being dramatic enough. Do you remember when Derek Muller was bullying you in 6th grade? Do you remember who made it stop? That has nothing to do with... Do you remember when Mom and Dad were fighting so bad you couldn't sleep? Who told you stories until you felt safe? Abby, stop! Do you remember promising to visit me in Portland? Do you remember our pancake tradition? Do you remember anything about us before Claire decided I didn't fit into your new life? Leave Claire out of this. How can I? She's the reason I wasn't invited. Mom admitted it. Claire didn't want me there, and you all just went along with it. It's more complicated than that. No, it's not. It's actually very simple. You chose her over me. You chose her comfort over my inclusion. You chose to erase me from your life rather than stand up for your sister. I didn't erase you. Really? When's the last time we talked? Ryan, when's the last time you called just to see how I was? When's the last time you treated me like I mattered? Silence. In that silence, I heard the answer. I hope she's worth it, I said quietly. I hope Claire is worth losing your sister. Because that's what's happening here. You've made your choice, and now I'm making mine. What's that supposed to mean? It means I'm done. I'm done trying to maintain a relationship you clearly don't want. I'm done pretending we're still family when you've made it clear we're not. I'm done being the only one who remembers what we used to have. Abby, you're overreacting. No. Ryan, I'm finally reacting appropriately. You want me out of your life? Consider it done. You want to pretend you don't have a sister? I'll make it easy for you. From now on, you don't. You don't mean that. I do. I really do. Congratulations on your engagement. I hope your wedding is everything Claire dreams of. I hope your life is perfect and polished and completely free of inconvenient sisters who remember when you were human. I hung up before he could respond. My hands were shaking, but I felt strangely calm. The decision, once made, brought an unexpected peace. I'd spent so long trying to hold on to something that no longer existed. Letting go felt like setting down a weight I hadn't realized I'd been carrying. My phone immediately started ringing again. Ryan. I declined the call. It rang again. This time it was my mother. I declined that too. Then my father. Decline. I went into my settings and blocked all 3 numbers. The silence that followed was deafening and liberating. I poured another glass of wine and opened my laptop. The photo was still there. That happy woman on the mountain. Arms spread wide to embrace a world that embraced her back. I made it my desktop wallpaper. A reminder of who I was when I wasn't trying to fit into spaces that no longer welcomed me. My phone buzzed with a text from Sophie. How are you doing? Need company? I'm okay, I typed back. Better than okay. Actually, I think I just broke up with my family. Good for you. They didn't deserve you anyway. Thank you for this weekend, for reminding me what real family looks like. Always, babe, we love you. I smiled at that, feeling the warmth of it settle in my chest. Sophie was right. I had a family. It just wasn't the one I'd been born into. Over the next few days, the fallout continued. Emails flooded in from various relatives, most condemning my behavior. Some pretending to be neutral while clearly fishing for gossip. I didn't respond to any of them. What was the point? They'd already chosen their side. The most surprising message came from Emma, the cousin whose Instagram story had started this whole saga. She sent a long DM that I almost deleted unread, but curiosity got the better of me. Hey, Abby. It began. I wanted to apologize. I didn't know you weren't invited to the party when I posted those stories. If I had known, I would never have put them up. For what it's worth, I think it's messed up that they excluded you. Ryan's changed a lot since he started dating Claire, and not for the better. Your photo from the mountains was beautiful. You looked really happy. I'm glad you have people in your life who appreciate you. Family shouldn't treat family the way they've treated you. I read it twice, feeling a mix of vindication and sadness. At least someone saw the situation for what it was. I sent back a simple, "Thank you for saying that. It means more than you know." But Emma's message was the exception. Most of my extended family seemed to have accepted the narrative that I was a jealous, attention-seeking drama queen who couldn't handle her brother's happiness. It was easier, I supposed, than acknowledging the cruelty of excluding someone from their own brother's engagement celebration. Work became my refuge. I threw myself into projects with renewed focus, earning praise from clients and my boss. I started taking on more challenging assignments, pushing my creative boundaries. When my boss mentioned a potential promotion to lead designer, I actually felt excited about my future for the first time in months. Evenings were harder. The habit of family was hard to break. I'd find myself reaching for my phone to text Ryan about something funny that happened, only to remember we weren't speaking. I'd see something that reminded me of Mom and have to resist the urge to call. The absence of them was a constant ache, like a phantom limb. But slowly, that ache began to fade. I filled the empty spaces with new things. I joined a hiking group and spent weekends exploring trails around Oregon. I took a pottery class and discovered I was terrible at it but enjoyed it anyway. I said yes to social invitations I would have previously declined, building friendships that weren't complicated by shared history and family loyalty. 2 months after the engagement party disaster, I ran into an old family friend at a coffee shop. Mrs. Chen had known our family for years and had always been kind to me. I braced myself for judgment or awkward questions, but instead, she hugged me warmly. I heard about what happened, she said quietly. I want you to know that not everyone agrees with how you were treated. Some of us remember the little girl who took such good care of her baby brother. It's a shame he's forgotten. I blinked back tears. Thank you for saying that. Are you doing okay? Really okay? I thought about it, taking inventory of my life. My work was fulfilling. My friendships were strong. I was healthy, creative, independent. I had a good life, even if it wasn't the one I'd imagined. Yeah, I said, meaning it. I really am. She patted my hand. Good. You deserve to be happy, Abby, with or without them. As fall turned to winter, I heard bits of news through the grapevine. Ryan and Claire's wedding planning was in full swing. They'd chosen a venue, set a date for next June, hired what was apparently the most exclusive wedding planner in Seattle. I wondered if I'd eventually receive a pity invitation, some last-minute attempt to avoid questions about my absence. I wondered if I'd go, even if they asked. The holidays loomed, bringing with them a fresh wave of grief. Thanksgiving with Sophie's family was warm and welcoming. But I couldn't help remembering past years at the Turner table, when we still pretended to be a functional family. Christmas was harder. I volunteered at a soup kitchen on Christmas Eve, trying to fill the void with service. It helped. But I still cried myself to sleep that night, mourning not just what I'd lost, but what I'd never really had. January brought unexpected clarity. I was cleaning out a closet when I found a box of old photos I'd forgotten about. Pictures from childhood, from college, from various family gatherings over the years. I spread them out on my living room floor, creating a timeline of our disintegration. There was 5-year-old Ryan on my shoulders at the zoo, 10-year-old Ryan and me building a snow fort, teenage Ryan hugging me at his high school graduation, and then, gradually, fewer pictures. More distance between us even when we were in the same frame. By the time Claire appeared in the photos, I was already relegated to the edges, half cut out of frame as if the camera itself knew I was becoming irrelevant. But there were other photos too. Sophie and me at wine tastings, Mark teaching me to rock climb, Lily painting my nails in rainbow colors, my coworkers celebrating my birthday with a surprise party, friends from my hiking group at various summits. A whole life documented, separate from the Turners, but no less valid. I gathered up the family photos and put them back in the box. I didn't throw them away, but I put them on a high shelf, out of daily sight. The past deserved its place, but it didn't need to dominate my present. In February, I got the promotion, lead designer, with a significant raise and my own team to manage. I celebrated with Sophie and Mark, who took me to my favorite restaurant and made a toast to my success. To Abby, Sophie said, raising her glass, who proves every day that the best revenge is a life well lived. To chosen family, I countered, and to mountains that don't judge you for climbing them. We laughed, we drank, we stayed out too late on a work night. I woke up the next morning slightly hungover but genuinely happy. My life wasn't perfect, but it was mine. The wedding invitation never came. June arrived with no acknowledgement that I should be there to watch my brother marry. The absence of an invitation was almost worse than being explicitly excluded. It was erasure, complete and deliberate. The day of the wedding, I deliberately scheduled myself to lead a challenging hike with my group. We tackled a trail I'd been wanting to attempt for months, 8 miles with significant elevation gain. At what I calculated would be roughly the time Ryan was saying, "I do." I was standing on a peak, surrounded by friends who'd become like family, looking out at a view that took my breath away. Someone took a photo of me there, candid and unposed. When I saw it later, I was struck by how different I looked from that carefully curated engagement party photo. This woman was stronger, her smile more genuine even if tinged with sadness. She looked like someone who'd been through something difficult and come out the other side. I posted it without caption, without context, just me, on a mountain, living my life. The likes and comments that followed were from people who actually knew me, who celebrated my accomplishments, who showed up for my daily existence rather than just major events. That night, back home and exhausted from the hike, I sat with a glass of wine and finally allowed myself to grieve. Not for the brother who'd chosen to exclude me, but for the brother I'd lost years ago. For the little boy who used to think I hung the moon. For the relationship that had been dying so slowly I hadn't noticed until it was gone. I grieved for my parents too. For their inability or unwillingness to stand up for me. For their choice to keep the peace rather than keep their daughter. For all the times they'd failed to fight for our family when it mattered. But mostly, I grieved for the girl I'd been. The one who tried so hard to hold everyone together that she forgot to hold onto herself. The one who made herself smaller to fit into spaces that were never going to expand for her. The one who believed that love meant accepting whatever crumbs were offered. That girl deserved better. And finally, I was giving her better. My phone, silent for months from family, buzzed with a text from Sophie. Movie night tomorrow, Mark's making his famous popcorn. Wouldn't miss it, I typed back. And I meant it. This was my family now. The ones who showed up. The ones who chose me as fiercely as I chose them. The ones who knew that love wasn't supposed to come with conditions and exclusions and carefully managed guest lists. Somewhere in Seattle, my brother was dancing at his wedding, surrounded by everyone who'd made the cut. I hoped he was happy. I hoped Claire was everything he'd chosen her over. I hoped the life they built together was worth the one he'd demolished. But mostly, I hoped nothing at all for them. They'd made their choice, and I'd made mine. And as I sat in my apartment, planning tomorrow's movie night and next weekend's camping trip and all the life I had yet to live, I knew I'd chosen right. The mountains were calling, and I must go. But first, I had a family dinner to attend. Just not the family I'd started with. The family I'd found along the way. The family that never made me wonder if I belonged. In the end, that was the greatest revenge of all. Not the photos or the success or the promotion. Just the simple, radical act of being happy without them. Of building a life so full that their absence was notable only for how little it mattered anymore. They'd thought they were excluding me from something important. They'd actually freed me to find something better. And I had